Now that you've completed the chapter on the printing processes, let's review what you learned. In this chapter, you learned the important attributes of print and what they mean, including registration, density, dot gain, and trapping. You learned that registration is the relative positioning of the image on the substrate, or the paper, and the relative positioning of each ink layer over another. The density is the intensity or visual strength of the ink that influences the color quality of the final printed image. You learned that dot gain is the extent of growth that takes place in the size of a halftone dot or screen tint dot from the printing plate to the printed sheet. All printing processes, with the exception of electrostatic, electrophotographic printing, are subject to dot gain, and that trapping is the extent to which one film of ink sticks to another when printing one ink film over another. You also learn that letterpress printing from a raised surface, from a raised image, was the mainstay of printing for centuries, but it is for the most part an obsolete process today, with the exception of some specialty applications. And lithography is printing from a flat surface on which the image areas and non-image areas are on the same plane. This process is based on the principle that grease and water do not mix. You learn that gravure printing has its origins in the early 17th century, when the intaglio process, the intaglio printing process, was developed to replace woodcuts in illustrating some of the finest books of the time. And similarly to letterpress printing, flexography involves printing from a raised image on the plate. The difference, however, is that the flexographic plate is typically made of synthetic rubber or a photopolymer material. You learn that screen printing is the simplest of the traditional printing processes. The image to be printed is formed on a screen made of synthetic fibers over which a stencil is placed that represents the non-image areas. You also learned that digital printing is the fastest growing printing process and is able to more easily accept jobs directly from a computer system and produce a printing plate or image, a cylinder, while the press is still running. Digital printing can produce jobs with shorter run lengths and greater variability than conventional presses could ever cost-effectively handle. One unique aspect of digital printing is the ability to incorporate variable data printing, or what we call VD printing, into a job. There are different printing engines that drive digital presses. Digital printing systems consist of inkjet, electrostatic, photoelectrographic, magnetographic, ion deposition, light-emitting diodes, digital systems consist of inkjet, electrostatic, electrophotographic, magnetographics, ion deposition, light-emitting diode, liquid crystal shutter, electronic beam imaging, thermal, and electrostatic printing. These are all processes used mainly for short runs and printing variable or personalized information, in which data representing the images are in digital form until the moment of actual imaging. In the early days of the technology, inkjet printing was used mainly for variable printing, such as addressing coding, computer letters, sweepstakes, sweepstake forms, and other personalized direct mail advertising. But today, inkjet printing competes with offset lithography in the range and quality of jobs that the process can produce. You learned in this chapter that electrophotographic and electrostatic printing are similar in that they relate to the principles of xerography, where toner particles are used to form an image, and that wide format digital printers provide access to inexpensive, large-sized, full-color printing posters with You learned in this chapter that electrostatic and electrophotographic printing are similar in that they relate to the principles of what we call xerography, where toner particles are used to form an image, and that wide format digital printers provide access to inexpensive, large-sized, full-color prints and posters, wall displays, and much more. While offset, gravure, and flexography are likely to endure for a long time, the incursions of digital printing will continue to dominate the graphic communication industry and continue to grow. Go back, review the chapter, and play the videos, as they provide a depth of information that cannot be provided by static images.